word to wise. Grass only greener when it's fertilized. Gave them truth in these songs, they prefer to lies. Destiny beautiful, adrift in her purple lies. You can't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Ernie, Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. All right, today's video, we're gonna be talking about New Mutants, number 23 by Vita Ayala and Rod Rice. And in this video, I'm gonna break down to you exactly why Amahl Farouk, the host of the Shadow King, may just be the victim in all of this. We're gonna talk about all that and more right now, but first, if you wanna see more awesome videos like this one, make sure you hit that subscribe button because I post multiple videos throughout the week, plus live stream the Blerd Cave every Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, so that way you don't miss anything. Also, if you enjoy the video, I humbly ask that you Hulk smash that like button because it really helps the channel out. That said, let's talk about New Mutants, number 23. So when last we left off with the New Mutants, they were facing off with the Shadow King, who was, for all intents and purposes, taking control of their minds and sending them into the astral plane and manipulating what they see, forcing them to go through some type of a loop where they literally are going through the destruction of Krakoa, seeing all of the things that could potentially destroy the mutant motherland. And we were told in one of the data pages for New Mutants number 22 that there was a specific instance in the loop that actually worked out. All the previous ones, pretty much everybody dies. Everyone gets killed and everything ends eventually. But this time around, this actually changes. We were told that there were some other presences in the astral plane with the New Mutants, but we weren't really told who they were, and now we know exactly who they are in this issue. The characters of No Girl, Cosmar, Rainboy, Scout, and Amahl wind up using their own synergies that they have been working on since the Vita Ayala run began. They're able to combine their mutant abilities to make a new mutant circuit, one that would allow all of their powers to flow through one another. Thanks to No Girl's telepathic abilities, Amahl and Scout's regenerative healing properties, Cosmar's reality warping capabilities, and Rainboy's ability to connect all of them using the liquid that makes up his body. They're able to enter the astral plane alongside the New Mutants. This turns into a situation where it's the kids versus the adults, not necessarily in a physical fight either. It's a battle of wills, because the New Mutants pretty much believe that Amahl Farouk is the bad guy in this and that he needs to be taken down, maybe even killed if necessary. While the Lost Club, they believe that Amahl Farouk might just be, well, yes, he's done bad things, and yeah, he very likely is the bad guy in this, is that he's probably an unwilling participant in a lot of this. And I'm not gonna do a lot of the hemming and hawing that this story has done about this, kind of stretching this out over the course of several issues, and I don't mean that in a negative way either. It's just it's a thing that's kind of been thrown around and bandied about back and forth since the Shadow King was reintroduced on Krakoa during Vita Ayala's run. But the point of the matter is that the kids are right. Amahl Farouk is an unwilling participant. We see data pages and even actual panels where the Shadow King and Amahl Farouk are very much at odds with one another. That Amahl Farouk believes the New Mutants and the Lost Club are going to defeat him, that the Shadow King is no match for the mutants of Krakoa, and that he does believe that they are going to destroy what little bit is left of the Shadow King. At this particular point, and I would forgive you if you don't remember any of this happening, but during the events of Astonishing X-Men Volume 4, number 12, Charles Xavier, who at the particular point in time, he was just going by X, not Professor X, just X, and I believe this was also after his mind had been placed into Phantom X's body. Both X and Psylocke were the ones who took down the Shadow King and thought they had destroyed him completely, but that was not the case. They did destroy him, but they didn't completely get rid of him. There's still a piece of the Shadow King, and he's not as powerful as he used to be. Now, that said, he is still incredibly dangerous, because even a being like the Shadow King being reduced to being a mere, well, pun intended, shadow of his former self, he is still powerful enough to subdue the entirety of the New Mutants. But once again, the quandary, the moral quandary that they are faced with is that inside the astral plane, they're trapped inside what they believe was a cage for themselves. It was actually a cage for the Shadow King. Ultimately, yes, this is the New Mutants versus the Shadow King. Of course, a fight is going to break out, but none of them are powerful enough to 100% destroy the Shadow King on their own. And not only that, the Shadow King has taken over the mind of Wolfsbane and is using her to help protect him because she has learned through a secondary mutation how to split her essence up into 5 separate wolves, and using all of those forms to try and fight back against the New Mutants and the Lost Club. But at the end of it all, everyone is able to see each other's point of view. Everyone is able to finally reach some kind of an understanding, because that's honestly what this is all about. Because deep down, Amahl Farouk knows that the New Mutants are there to help him, that they're there to save him. But the Shadow King himself is trying everything humanly possible, manipulating everyone to keep them turning on one another, to distract them from the real threat, even trying to make himself appear as Amahl Farouk's younger self as a child. And this is something I think is kind of double-pronged here, because I think this is not only the Shadow King trying to manipulate the New Mutants' emotions, but I also feel this is a representation of how weak he has become, that from a power perspective, he's nothing more than a child to them. But one of the things I love in this is something that I've posited on multiple occasions since the story arc began, and I've gone back and forth on this just as many times, but one of the things I've constantly said about this is that I really hope that Amahl Farouk is not actually the one who is preying on these children, that is not his idea, that is not him that is trying to manipulate everybody and doing all these terrible things. That hopefully maybe he found a way to change, and it turns out Amahl Farouk has actually changed. He is trying to become someone else. He's trying to become a better version of himself than he was before, and this is something I talked about when we did the video for Moon Knight, is that that's one of my favorite things. I love second chances. I love seeing people try to break the mold and become better than what they used to be, not remaining stagnant in their terrible natures, but trying to be a better person, if for no one else but themselves. Now, of course, we also do see when the Shadow King and Amahl Farouk are speaking just among themselves on the astral plane, it does also seem that the roles are a little bit reversed. The Shadow King actually looks more like Amahl Farouk as he is today, albeit a bit more monstrous and angry, whereas Amahl Farouk is a child, kind of also flipping the dynamic and, also kind of showing us that Amahl Farouk is the one who is in a weaker position than the Shadow King. But what I love here is, despite that, Amahl Farouk is defiant in the face of the Shadow King. In the end, thanks to synergy between Karma and Magic, as well as an assist by Amahl Farouk, they're able to take down the Shadow King once and for all, or we presume. But the question is, what comes next? What's the next move after this? Because if the last drop of essence of the Shadow King has truly been defeated, all that leaves is Amahl Farouk and a few angry people. There are people who are still angry at him for his past sins. There are people who are still afraid of him because of his past sins. But all that aside, even with the Shadow King gone, Amahl Farouk still had to live through all the trauma and darkness and terrible things that the Shadow King made him do. It's even been pointed out that everything that the Shadow King has been doing, even the things that he thought he was doing for good, he was actually still being manipulated by the Shadow King. It was, in fact, Amahl Farouk who was the one who had the idea to bring the Lost Club together, to teach them how to use their abilities to help them become stronger. That was Amahl Farouk's idea. However, it was an idea that was planted in his mind by the Shadow King, because the Shadow King was basically, as I have constantly stated at various points up to this, he was trying to prepare his next host. And I think that might even be what hurts Amahl Farouk the most, that he did try and do the right thing. He did try to do what was best for Krakoa. He tried to help people, and even that was poisoned by the Shadow King himself. But once again, going back to the whole thing about second chances, I love the fact that it was the kids who were the ones who explained that you can't just judge Amahl Farouk on his past sins, especially those that were manipulated by the Shadow King himself, because they are two completely different people. Amahl is just a puppet in all this, and I love the fact that it's the kids that are the ones that point out that we don't have to forgive him, but we know that sometimes it's not just black and white, that sometimes there's shades of gray to things. And while characters like Karma, Mirage, Magic, pretty much all of the OG New Mutants have reason to hate the Shadow King, they don't really have a good reason to hate the man, Amahl Farouk. In the end of all this, one thing I do hope that we get to see, because as you may notice throughout this comic, we actually get to see what No Girl looks like, I think for the first time since Grant Morrison's new X-Men number 118, which is when she first debuted, and even then, when we see her for the first time, she's just a brain encased in glass. So So in the astral plane, we're actually seeing what No Girl truly looks like, and I do wonder if we're actually going to see her be brought back, if they'll actually take the time to resurrect her and put her in her true form. Another thing I dug about this too is that when they're in the astral plane, Cosmar also looks different. Now, while she still retains a more deformed appearance, she doesn't look as exaggeratedly deformed as we typically see her. She still has the messed up eye, the purple skin, and some of the scaly nature and stuff like that, but she doesn't look as twisted as we've seen her before. So part of me is wondering, now that they're back in the real world, will they try and make this more of a thing? We do see that No Girl and Cosmar are back to looking the way they've looked before, but I do wonder if we'll maybe finally see Cosmar either just accept the way they look now or use their powers to make themselves look as they perceive themselves in the astral plane, or will they go through the crucible and then try and regain their normal looks that way? And I wonder the same for No Girl. Is No Girl gonna go through the crucible and have themselves resurrected to appear the way they would prefer to appear? It's something I'm very curious to see how it's gonna play out, because even though this storyline has, I would say, presumably been brought to a close, there's still a lot more to dig into with the aftermath of defeating the Shadow King, presumably once and for all. I'm also curious to see what Amahl Farouk's personality is going to be like after he's been set free from the Shadow King. That's something we really haven't seen much, if any, of since the character was first debuted back in X-Men number 117 in 1978. We've pretty much almost always seen Amahl Farouk under the influence of the Shadow King, so it's going to be interesting to see what he's going to be like after all of that has been set aside. Another thing I'm curious about too is I wonder how much more we're going to dive in to the situation going on with Wolfsbane and her son Tyr. It is even briefly brought up in this issue during the fight against the Shadow King, where the Shadow King himself even tries to shift the blame from himself to the New Mutants, bringing up that they killed her son Tyr, which technically not exactly the case, though I think the Shadow King may be speaking in generalities, because truth be told, it was actually Strong Guy who killed Tyr back in X Factor number 256. It wasn't the New Mutants as a whole. Matter of fact, I don't even think many of any of the characters that are present now were even there for that particular instance. Technically, Wolfsbane was there, and she did kind of just stand idly by as it happened, and the last time that we actually saw Tyr was during the X-Men tie-ins for War of the Realms. And for all intents and purposes, Tyr was back on Earth thanks to a deal Himrari had made with Amora, the Enchantress, that allowed them to escape from Hell and reunite with Wolfsbane. But it was actually Wolfsbane's actions in attacking Sabretooth that led to Tyr having to return to Hell. So technically, yeah, Amahl Farouk is saying, oh, don't let them kill me like you let them kill Tyr, but she didn't really let anyone do it. When Strong Guy killed Tyr, it was a sneak attack. No one saw it coming. So there wasn't really a whole heap of a lot that Wolfsbane could have done. Speaking of redemptions, I'm curious to see what they are going to do with Xian's brother Tran, because at another point in this issue, we see that the Shadow King is making the New Mutants face off with their deepest, darkest fears. Case in point, Mirage is having to face off against the Demon Bear, Magic is having to face off against the dark Limbo version of herself, Warpath is facing off against his brother Thunderbird, and we see that Karma is facing off with her brother Tran. These are basically all crutches and weight that these characters have been carrying for quite some time, and in the case of Mirage and Magic, I feel like they've handled their crutches a bit more than what we've seen with Warpath and Karma, so I'm kind of hoping that maybe this is a hint that we're gonna finally see what's up with Tran. Has Tran changed since he was seemingly set up for resurrection during the ending of Vita Ayala's New Mutants number 18? And of course, we've seen Warpath muse about his brother Thunderbird, so I'm kind of curious to see, like, there's been a lot of him and Han and mentions of Thunderbird. We've even seen Thunderbird mentioned by name, even referenced an homage in Jerry Duggan's X-Men when Cyclops talked about renaming the Blackbird the Thunderbird in his honor. So I'm wondering if there's going to be any more seeds planted towards that, and if this overall may be a taste of things to come. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video, Hulk smash that like button and make sure to share it all over the internet with all your friends, so that way they'll know how you leveled up your comic book big brain in regards to the New Mutants and the fall of the Shadow King. On your way out, make sure to hit that subscribe button and let me know what you thought about New Mutants number 23. Keep it plus ultra and sound off in the comments.